My name is Evan Davis. I'm a registered nurse. I have a bachelor's degree in nursing science. I also have a degree in education, math and science. My wife and I are originally from this area. We've lived in towns. I've done a lot of traveling. And we love this area. It's peaceful and serene, and we wanted to live here and raise our family here. I'm a registered nurse case manager for a home care agency, and I see patients throughout northern Chautauqua County. We don't have solid evidence to show direct correlations, but there's definitely been an increase in referrals and in health concerns in the Arkwright area related to these windmills. Basic knowledge of human anatomy: the vestibule is in the inner ear, and that controls balance. It's connected directly to the nausea center of the brain. For those who have ever experienced motion sickness, the vestibule controls that. Exposure to long-term sound waves and low-frequency vibrations stimulate small, they're called ossicles in the inner ear, and vibrations of that can affect long-term hearing, balance, nausea, levels of consciousness, sleep disorders. That's a scientific fact. But none of that has been addressed with this wind project. If you read the SCIS by this company, Mr. Mark Lyons, the project manager, said that this area is sparsely populated, the homes are spread out, so the impact is going to be insignificant. How can somebody say that the impact on my family is insignificant? How unfair is that? One particular patient, 3 months after the windmills went in the Arkwright area, this patient lives within about a 3-mile radius of the main project, and there's windmills in their direct backyard. Suffered stroke for what is known as idiopathic. She had no risk factors. Younger woman. Major loss in unilateral body strength, functioning, vision in relation to the stroke. They can't figure out why it's happened. None of the doctors, she had no risk factors, not smoker, healthy diet, active lifestyle. That's just one of several instances. I'm seeing in a lot of elderly patients what's known as syncope, or sudden loss of consciousness. In some cases related to cardiovascular. Other cases, again, idiopathic. Can't prove a reason. But the coincidence of all of this happening within 3 to 6 months after the windmills going in seems too much of a coincidence to me. I think that the windmills is somewhat of a unique situation because we can see health effects in a relatively short period of time. Look at the mesothelioma caused from the asbestos. That didn't present for many, many years. In some cases, more than 30 years. We're talking several months. Like the vestibular effects that I alluded to, I see patients having these symptoms within developing over a several-week period. I had a patient not too far from here. She suffered from severe dizziness, nausea, and vomiting 24 hours a day. They tried everything that they could to figure out what was causing it. There's a procedure called an Epley maneuver that's done by physical therapists to try to realign those ossicles I mentioned. That did not work. They tried different types of medications, Zofran or ondansetron. There's other antihistamines, meclizine, or Antivert, which is used for vertigo. Did nothing, didn't fix the problem. Patient went on a trip, tried to just get away, clear mind, got away from the windmills, symptoms went away. Comes back home, they come back within the day. Can we prove without a doubt what's causing it? Probably not without extensive research and study. They've done studies on actually like you said, in vitro, on the genetic. This low frequency vibration can actually alter the genetic makeup, which has been associated with cancerous growths. It's been associated with birth defects. The problem with these types of wind projects, the long-term effects are so far-reaching that we are only just now starting to really see the major fallout of them. As far as pediatrics, development, hearing, sleep patterns, it's all affected. The way a child's body is, when compared to an adult, everything is accentuated. So children, whether animals, humans, they're so much more susceptible to any external stimulus than an adult is. So if we see it in an adult, you're going to see exponential increase of similar symptoms or worsened in children. So it's just a gross injustice that someone else can dictate the health and safety of our family and loved ones. We're expecting our first child in October, and we come to a serene countryside, looking to raise our family, and now all of a sudden we have to worry about any number of health effects to our unborn child, and there's nothing we can do about it.
In terms of going to be a new mother for the first time, obviously there's a lot of excitement and anxiety in itself, but then finding out about these windmills and it not just being about the subjective of what it's going to look like or the sound that we're going to hear, but conducting further research into how this will impact or could possibly impact not only myself, not only my husband, but our baby. And as he had said earlier, the smaller the human, the smaller their systems, the cardiovascular system, you have their little inner ears, all of the parts. I don't know them all because I'm not a medical professional, refer back to him. But knowing that could affect my child. Last year I went through an episode not related to windmills, but a lot of symptoms that are similar to what people are experiencing from the windmills. I was dizzy, I was always feeling sick, I wasn't able to, my ears always felt full, there was ringing, the tinnitus, and I lived that way for like 3 months and I didn't know what I was going to do. So when it comes to people who are irritable, who are around these wind turbines, you could see how experiencing symptoms like that could impact someone in that way. I was miserable. He was miserable. It was horrible. And to think that my child could experience something even more severe than what I did is unthinkable. And then I panic inside because I'm like, well, if they put up these windmills and we find that it's going to be in our best interest to leave the area because we are literally being impacted like this, then we can't sell our house because it's going to decrease our property value. We're not going to get what we put into it. In this past year, preparing for our family and just trying to make this house into the home we wanted, we have put so much time and so much money into it. And to think that we wouldn't be able to leave for the well-being of ourselves and our child because we could not afford it, I don't understand how someone else can make that decision. that is going to impact us in that way, not only our well-being, but also our property value that keeps us stuck here, how they can make that decision to alter our lives for the worst.
Several of my coworkers actually, before we even, one in particular, before we even had, she knew anything about the windmill project, she was new to the area, new to our agency, had asked me why all of a sudden was she getting so many referrals for speech therapy, which was related to different centers in the brain, relating to cognitive function or post-stroke. So we're seeing a lot of referrals in other areas, physical, occupational therapy, many of it related to musculoskeletal, movement issues, as I mentioned, speech, sleep disturbances, insomnia, that's been a big one. A lot of patients in that area suffering insomnia. Doctors are prescribing more sleep aids. That's been probably some of the biggest ones. As far as medically, stress is a huge factor. And as a matter of fact, the World Health Organization did a study on that very subject, and that cortisol, which is a stress hormone, in individuals, this actually was pretty interesting. They specifically did a study on people around the windmill, and they found higher levels of stress cortisol, and which relates to higher instances of depression, among other physiological symptoms. Just being, so cortisol is the stress hormone that is responsible for when you get upset, your mouth gets dry, your hands start shaking. It plays a part in that pathway. If something upsets you and something upsets you long term, you're going to have physical symptoms. So that again is different by person. Some people think they're great, and they love them. They're getting monetary gain from it, and they don't feel that the health effects outweigh their monetary gain. Other people that, even if they're not having specific medical symptoms, if they are so upset about something that it affects their mental state, it's going to express in a wide variety of ways. Yeah. Things may have been going on even in the last few months that I wasn't aware, looking for other sources for some of these problems and symptoms that patients were expressing. And the more research I did on it, the more I found out there's possibility of complications that might be related to this. I think that more people need to be educated on what effects can happen, because even physicians, they might be looking for a different answer. Just the fact that, like you had mentioned, some calves dying might not seem that unusual, but then you find out, oh, wait a minute, this is within close proximity to this windmill. The more research you're going to do, you're going to find direct correlations where before you might not have seen one. And that's how health and science works. This isn't a controlled lab experiment where you can just test on rats. We're live subjects, and they're experimenting on us in the real world. Given, this has been seen, you read research in other wind farms around the world and around the country, and you don't have to look far to find all these negative health impacts.
Generally, when you go to a physician's office and you get to see the doctor, they're not the ones that are looking at where you're living. They're not seeing the correlation between proximity of, oh my gosh, all of these people living in Arkwright are coming in with these symptoms, or they've experienced stroke.
they don't see that. It's usually the nurses that take care of that and validate and verify information prior to seeing the doctor. So to them, people coming in and having such symptoms might not really be out of the realm, unfortunately, as stroke and cancer rates seem to be rising. So it'd be hard, I think, for them to be able to pinpoint or realize that there might be a correlation to the people that they are seeing. Just kind of my observation as I work in a health service that also I'm a social worker, but we're in with primary as well. So you see the front staff asking, okay, verifying, okay, your address, name, number, and then when you go into the doctor's office, they just ask for your date of birth to verify that you are who you are supposed to be. So I think that might be where that gap is.
It boggles my mind why no one would want to bring more of this to light. The health of our families and loved ones, no one wants to listen. Wouldn't, if even there was a small glimmer of something that would have an adverse effect, wouldn't the state, wouldn't public officials, elected officials of a town or a county, they have a civic duty, even more so than, say, a healthcare provider. They have a civic duty over the people and residents to make sure that they're safe. Why would they put monetary gains above the health of the citizens? It's un-American.